Alright, welcome to Chapter 13 in your textbook. This is Section 13.1. The first thing we're going to take a look at is how to find exact values using this idea of ASTC. So suppose we want to find the exact value of the sine of 5 pi over 4. Well, the first thing to do, usually people find it much easier to deal with degrees rather than radians. So rewrite this 5 pi over 4 in degrees. Okay, that's really your first step. So 5 pi over 4, well, if you know that pi over 4 is 45, this is really 5 times 45, so we're looking at the sine of 225. Now, that is not our final answer. That's just what the sine of 5 pi over 4 is. So we need to figure out what the sine of 225 is. So, to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to draw a 225 degree angle in standard position. So remember, that means we're going to start the angle right here in the positive x-axis, and we're going to draw it in a counterclockwise manner. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a right triangle out of it in the meantime. So here is my 225 degree angle. So straight across would be 180 degrees. So that means I would have 45 left over. Well, what we do is we create for ourselves a 45, 45, 90 special right triangle. Okay, so this is the actual angle. Okay, and then we just draw this additional vertical line here to the x-axis to make ourselves a right triangle. Well, recall that the sides are going to be in a ratio of 1 to 1 to radical 2. And also recall that we have this idea of ASTC, which tells us where our trig functions are positive. Notice that only tangent is positive in that quadrant. So that means this is going to have to be negative. Okay, so if we're trying to find the sine, your person is always going to be standing at the origin. Sine we know is opposite over hypotenuse, so that's going to be -1 over radical 2. So this is our exact value, all right, for the sine of 5 pi over 4. It's the same as the sine of 225, okay? Now, this is approximately -0.707. So if you were to punch in the sine of 225 in your calculator, hit enter, and then if you were to punch in -1 divided by radical 2 in your calculator, you would see this decimal for both of them, okay? Okay, next one here, we're looking to find the value of the cosine of 11 pi over 6. All right, and we want the exact value, okay? So we're not just going to throw that into our calculator, okay? Let's suppose you weren't even allowed to use the calculator. So this is the same as the cosine of, well, this pi over 6. You should have that memorized. That's 30. So you really have 11 times 30. So this is the same as the cosine of 330 degrees. So draw yourself a 330 degree angle, all right, in standard form, or standard position. So 330 degrees would take us all the way around, and we would be left with 30 here remaining. So if we were to make a right triangle out of this, we'd have a 30, 60, 90 special right triangle. And remember, these sides are in a certain ratio. Okay, the one across from the 30 is 1, hypotenuse is 2, the one across from the 60 is radical 3. Okay, now also keep in mind ASTC down here, cosine is only one positive, so that means we are expecting a positive answer. Okay, so we're trying to find the cosine of 330. Well, this is the same as just the cosine of 30. Okay, in the previous problem I should have mentioned, and please go back and write down, we were talking about the sine of 225. All right, in our diagram, that's really the same as the sine of 45. Okay, so just make note of that in the previous example, please. All right, so here, same idea. Whether we're talking about the cosine of 330 or the cosine of 30, it's the same thing. Okay, 30 is what's left over inside of this triangle. So if we were to think about the cosine, we know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So radical 3 over 2 is our exact value. Now, if you were to check it using a calculator, this is approximately 0.866. Okay, so if you punch in either the cosine of 330 the cosine of 30, or radical 3 over 2, you get positive 0.866 for all of them. Okay? So that's finding exact value. Draw a picture, mark it up, and by the way, if this were the cosine of 331, we couldn't do it because it's not going to produce a special right triangle. All right, these will always produce nice special right triangles where you could use your side ratios to find the exact value.